I have lost track of the days I have wandered this wasteland. Do they number in weeks or months or years now? I cannot tell. There is no life here. There is no rest, no respite. Another direct has come and gone, and still there is no word of Pikmin 4. Not even a glimpse of a teaser trailer on the horizon to spark hope in my heart. The memory of Hey Pikmin still haunts me, playing across my mind when my spirit is at its lowest, like some cruel jest. Will I ever escape this wasteland? Will I find what I seek? Will the light ever come? I do not know. All I can do is continue to wander. Wander and make videos. If you are here watching this video right now, it is no doubt because you share in my pain. You too wander a barren wasteland, hoping to one day come upon that promised kingdom that is Pikmin 4. As far as Nintendo's own updates on the game have gone, most of which have come straight from the mouth of series creator Shigeru Miyamoto himself, it's had something of a particular history. Lots of strange and seemingly conflicting information has come to the surface, and the big question is, if Nintendo's been talking about the game for so long now, where the heck is it? Why on earth am I not sending hundreds of Pikmin to their fiery deaths while I wait for my drive-thru burger this very instant? Well, I think it's time we get to the bottom of this. I think it's time for a deep, thought-provoking piece of investigative and speculative journalism on a series where you make adorable little flower creatures, fight bugs, and collect fruit and bottle caps and stuff. What are you doing with your life? The best thing we can do right now is try to work out something of a development timeline here. There have been many tidbits regarding Pikmin 4 to come out of Nintendo, which have been gathered here on the Pikmin 4 Wikipedia page, and they paint a hazy picture. I won't go over every single one, but I have gathered what I feel are the most pertinent tidbits. Very soon after the launch of Pikmin 3, Miyamoto confirmed that at the very least, there would be future Pikmin games. 3 didn't sell so badly that Nintendo was scrapping the whole series or anything like that. That much is not surprising. When talking about the series of animated Pikmin shorts Nintendo released in 2014, he stated that that kind of expansion of the brand helped to lay the groundwork for the series in the future, to keep interest and relevance up, essentially. And that makes perfect sense. Nintendo's been wanting to do that kind of brand expansion with all sorts of properties recently. Things didn't get really interesting, however, until an interview he did with Eurogamer. Now, there's a little confusion regarding when this interview took place. The article is dated September 7th, 2015, and it mentions meeting with Miyamoto, quote, back in July, suggesting July 2015. Wikipedia seems to insist that the interview took place in July of 2014, and that perhaps Nintendo didn't authorize publication until a year later. This seems unlikely, though the original publication date, as seen in the article's URL, does point to July 20th, 2014, so I can't say I'm exactly sure. That's beside the point, though. In the interview, Miyamoto gives us a quote that would go on to confuse Pikmin fans the world over, myself included, to this very day. It's actually very close to completion. Pikmin teams are always working on the next one. Wow, what? It was hard for me to wrap my brain around this. It was like, Shiggy, man, you're telling me that we had to wait 9 years for Pikmin 3, then after 3's only been out for like 1 or 2 years, suddenly you're telling us how the next one is nearly done? At the time, it most definitely seemed like he was referencing Pikmin 4 in this interview, and I would even believe so until recently when I started to dig a little deeper into this. The unknown element at the time of this article's publication was the existence of a delightful little surprise called Hey Pikmin. Seeing as the spin-off 3DS game was revealed in 2016 and released in 2017, it seems pretty obvious that this was the title Miyamoto was actually referring to. Several of my viewers have pointed this out, and I'm pretty sure you guys are right. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, this article is the sole source of this quote, so we can't do any further investigation there, but it seems to me that this was probably a communication and/or translation issue. I don't know whether Miyamoto was purposefully being sneaky, or he didn't consider that which specific Pikmin game was the next one was a big deal to us, but as anyone would reasonably expect, the Eurogamer staff assumed that he was referring to 4. Now, the moment Hey Pikmin was announced, we should have all then realized the mistake that had been made. In retrospect, it seems obvious that the close to completion comment was actually about the 3DS title, because the next one doesn't necessarily mean the next mainline Pikmin game. It just means the next Pikmin game, and Hey Pikmin was the next Pikmin game. But the idea of Pikmin 4 being close to completion persisted, and I believe it's because of this other part of the same article. Eurogamer goes on to say that it later reached out to Nintendo, and here we get an actual quote, without the author filling in the blanks for Miyamoto. We can confirm that Pikmin 4 is in development, but that is all we can confirm at present. The combination of these two quotes would throw us off for ages. Even if Miyamoto was talking about Hey Pikmin in his interview, that second quote directly from someone else at Nintendo is, to my knowledge, the first hard evidence of a full mainline Pikmin sequel being in development, meaning that development very well may have started soon after the launch of 3. And if that's the case, what gives? It's been 3.5 years since this article went up, or 4.5 if Wikipedia's assessment of the publication date is correct, which I'm not convinced that it is, but at least I'm open to the idea if I can find some other evidence. Well, let's keep filling in this picture. The next notable mention of Pikmin 4 was in a Game Rant article from E3 2016. When the site asked Miyamoto about the game's whereabouts, he said the following: "Yes, you are right, and we're working on Pikmin 4. So, you know, when we're in development, we have to create a list of priorities, and it has been hard to kind of fit that into that list, but we're hopefully starting to see that on the list now." Ah, the plot thickens! First, we now know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is talking about Pikmin 4 here, even if you could somehow be convinced that the direct quote from Nintendo in the Eurogamer article was another miscommunication. That cannot be the case here. At the time of this interview, Hey Pikmin was only a few months from being revealed, obviously making it a high priority title and not the game Miyamoto is referring to. Much more interestingly though, here we receive a bit of new insight. It's easy to think of a game as being in development or not, as though when everything's in place, a guy in the office shoots a blank into the air and yells "Go!" and all the designers and programmers begin work all at once and they all keep working until they reach the finish line a few years later. But with a big company like Nintendo that has a lot of different development teams working on a lot of different franchises at any given time, you're bound to get some smaller teams working on R&D to see what works and what direction a game should take before full development fully kicks off. Let's look back at that original Miyamoto quote from Eurogamer. "Pikmin teams are always working on the next one." Pikmin teams. In this case, he was most likely referring to Arzest, the team working on Hey Pikmin, and Nintendo's own internal development team responsible for the mainline Pikmin series. The always working thing means that, yeah, there's probably smaller scale, lower key Pikmin development going on at Nintendo at any given time. Because if he really meant that the team was always working, like full on working, it wouldn't have taken 9 years to bring us Pikmin 3, and Pikmin 4 would have probably been out by now. I mean, we ain't talking about Breath of the Wild here. It's hard for me to believe that designing a new Pikmin game would take more than 5 years of solid work. So that leaves us in something of a predicament. By the time of the Game Rant article, we knew for sure that Pikmin 4 was being worked on, but we didn't know how much work was going into it. Miyamoto said that it wasn't a priority at the current time, though he hoped that it would move up the list soon. Back in 2016, this was understandable. Nintendo was gearing up to launch the Switch and was working on all of its 2017 and 2018 games at the very least. Makes sense that a relatively niche title like Pikmin would have to wait its turn. But then the new question is, has the game been bumped up into full production yet, or is it still waiting? The most recent update was another Eurogamer interview with Miyamoto, where he was quoted as saying, "I've been told not to share anything about this from PR, but I can tell you it is progressing." On the surface, this really offers us nothing. This could mean that it's still being worked on by some small team, slowly, a little at a time, and that it could still be years before we even see it. But overanalyzing is my job, and the whole PR thing sounds a little more severe to me. It sounds like it's becoming less of a vague idea that might happen someday, and more like a project that he's got to keep his mouth shut about, i.e. a game that is actually getting significantly closer to completion, one that's on the slate for the next year or two. He also uses the word progressing, which could really mean anything, especially considering this was most likely translated, but "it's progressing" is a much more solid answer than "it's happening, maybe, probably, sort of, in some capacity." That's probably nothing, but hey, grasping at straws it's what I do. It's my favorite. But with all that said, where exactly does that leave us? After all this information, do we have any real idea at all of how long it might be before we see Pikmin 4? Well, I think the obvious answer is that no, we just plain don't. But at the very least, let's take a guess. The most recent quote was in 2017, right in the middle of the year. If, by that point, the PR pressure and Miyamoto's use of the word progressing meant nothing and the game was still not in full development, then we're simply out of luck. But if at that time the game was indeed finally coming along at a good rate, that means that it's been in development for a year and a half. And actually, it's probably been longer than that because he didn't say, "we just got started," he said it was progressing, meaning that it had probably been progressing for a while already. So how much time can we add to that estimate, if any? 6 months? A year? there's no knowing. But even if you do just look at that year and a half alone and consider that 3 years seems to be a fairly middle-of-the-road development time for a title like this, or at least a reasonable one, it is very much within the realm of possibility that we could get a reveal sometime in 2019 with a release in 2020. I mean, obviously a reveal could happen any day now and the game could release this summer. But I'm trying to keep my expectations in check here. Even though I'm not technically keeping my expectations in check because it could easily be 3 more years before we get a reveal, or even more, and maybe my year and a half estimate was indeed overly optimistic. I don't know. Now I'm just flustering myself all up. Pikmin reveal in 2019, please! Nintendo, please! I'll wait until 2020 for the game. Just give me something here. A trailer, a teaser, a promotional image, anything. Anyway, so this long, drawn-out wait for Pikmin 4 is pretty frustrating, I'm not gonna lie. I've expressed this many times before, but when it comes to upcoming Pikmin games, Miyamoto's behavior has just been weird. It would be hard enough to wait for Pikmin 4 even if we were completely in the dark regarding its development, but being strung along like this is just agonizing. Nintendo pretends like it doesn't like to reveal games too early, but then what's this? I would be better off not being sure about the sequel at all, so that I wasn't expecting an announcement at any time like a cat standing by its food dish waiting for the heavenly crinkle of the food bag. Years it's been like this. And it would be weird enough if this were the first time Miyamoto had done this for Pikmin, but the wait for Pikmin 3 was even worse. Not only was the total time 9 years, have I mentioned it was 9 years? Because yeah, it was 9 years. But he did the same thing with the way too early mentions and the long drawn-out development. He originally announced that the game would be coming to Wii in 2008, and there was a long series of vague updates after that, eventually leading to the announcement that the game had moved to the Wii U, and of course the eventual reveal in 2012 with the subsequent delay and release in August of 2013. This is killing me slowly. You know that, Nintendo? This is absolutely killing me. This is how you kill an Arlo, everyone. My only guess is that Pikmin is like Miyamoto's little pet project. All his other creations have been largely handed off to other directors and producers at Nintendo, but Pikmin is the one series that he holds very close to his heart and has remained largely under his control. He hasn't directed any of the games, but he's always been a major producer, and at least from the way he talks about the series, it sounds like he's got a big say in its design. I mean, he came up with the original concept, so maybe he just can't help himself when it comes to talking about it. Maybe he's just so excited about the series that he always wants to keep us up to date on the goings-on, even if there isn't really anything to report. I mean, there is at least a part of me that, despite my frustration, is happy to know that the series is still alive. It's never been a great performer, so it would be completely understandable if Nintendo wanted to shelve it completely for a decade or so. But even if it's low on the priorities list, even if it takes a real long time to get each Pikmin game, at least they're coming. At least Pikmin 4 is still something that I can look forward to playing, at least someday. Probably on my Switch, but hey, maybe not. I don't know. So there you have it, folks. Absolutely none of your questions have been answered, but perhaps this whole picture is just a smidge clearer than it was before. And who knows, we've still got a whole lot of Nintendo Directs ahead of us, and any one of them could potentially give us what our hearts so desire. Until then, though... Whoa!